So why do we ever have smart motorways? Well, it's actually really rather simple, isn't it? The fact is there were more cars on the road because there are more people in the country. And when you think about it, our population has risen by 8 million since the year 2001. It means a lot more people are out there driving. I won't go into the reasons why the population has increased by 8 million. I think I've been through those many, many times before. And I don't want to distract from what I think is a very, very important subject. I've been deeply sceptical about these smart motorways myself. I've had a couple of breakdowns over the years on the hard shoulder of busy motorways. And let me tell you, even being on the hard shoulder of a motorway is frightening. Those guys that go out from the AA and RAC, I tell you what, they're brave people. It is, even on the hard shoulder, it's dangerous, let alone being broken down in a lane with a wall next to it and nowhere to go. The idea is terrible. My other objection is, with so-called smart motorways, there seems to be a camera every couple of 100 yards. I mean, you don't look at the other cars on the road. You just literally stay glued to the speedometer as Big Brother watches every move you make. Now, we were expecting a big announcement from this government, and indeed this is a subject that Rishi Sunak talked about when he ran to be Conservative leader. What we got over the weekend, I think, was pretty pathetic. They tell us there'll be no new smart motorways. The 14 proposed projects will be shelved, but the existing smart motorways will remain. And so I have to ask myself, if it's not a good idea to extend the number of smart motorways, why is it a good idea to keep the existing ones? And the existing ones are unbelievably 10% of the motorway network in this country. Well, joining me, Mike Rawson, campaigner for Smart Motorways Kill, which indeed they do, don't they, Mike?
Sadly, the exact number is not known. We don't know how many people have suffered life-changing injuries, but we do know it's a lot. And what we also know, Nigel, is all those deaths were unnecessary. Because if the government wanted to widen the motorway, that's fine. Make it a 4-lane motorway, but put the hard shoulder back. But of course it was done to save money. And at the end of the day, lives, collateral damage, I suppose, to governments, but very sad for all those relatives and families left behind.
No, horrible. So they say they're shelving 14 proposed projects. Is that right, as far as you know?
It's hard to be certain. No, they are certainly carrying on with some of them. But what I find a bit strange, Nigel, the Prime Minister has said in public, smart motorways are unsafe.
And that's it. Just a pause for a second there. So the Prime Minister has said smart motorways are unsafe, and yet has decided to retain 10% of our motorways as unsafe.
That's the way I see it. Now, how can you possibly continue finishing current constructions in the knowledge that what you're building is ultimately unsafe?
Well, they say there are no more constructions to happen, but I mean, that is a grey area. What is for certain, then, is that the 10% of our motorways that at this moment in time are smart motorways are to some degree unsafe. Yet the government has, I thought the government had a duty of care to us as people. Could this, Mike Rawson, in your opinion, could this potentially open the way for legal challenges?
I think it could. I think for the relatives of someone killed who will take on the government, because that's what they're doing, and we've got to remember, Nigel, governments have got unlimited money. They've got our taxpayers' money to fight any case that anybody brings against them. I don't know why they can't give people legal aid when people do want to take action against the government. But I think they do have a case to answer. I'm not a legal expert by any means.
But it does raise the question, doesn't it?
Indeed it does. The Prime Minister has said, he said it during the leadership campaign. I heard him say it. It was on the television. These motorways are unsafe, and he's admitted the public are uncomfortable with them. They don't like them. And vast majority of people do not want these motorways, and they want the government to reinstate the hard shoulder to all of the motorways, and that is this Smart Motorways Kill campaign.
Yep.
We'll carry on with Claire, who I pay tribute to because, you know, she lost her husband in the most violent accident, terrible accident, and she's campaigned relentlessly for 4 years despite all the emotion, the stress that she carries with her. So she's done really well.
What I never hear, Mike, I never hear the police talking about this. The police seem to be stum about this subject. Do you have any insights as to what the police think?
I don't, but what I would say is, in my view, and I think the view of Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, who produced a report a couple of years ago, the police service are not really interested in policing traffic. It's a very low profile. There are many commitments, and I acknowledge the huge demands. But, you know, more people die on the roads than ever from burglaries or any crime. And I don't seek to diminish these crimes, Nigel. Please don't think that. But the public do need to be policed sensibly and fairly. And marked police vehicles do influence drivers' behaviour. And if that results in less people being involved in collisions, being injured and at worst killed, then the police really ought to be putting more effort.
I suppose in one way, the installation of thousands of speed cameras all over the country kind of does the job for the police, but it takes away discretion.
You're absolutely right. When there are police officers who enforce the law, you can talk to motorists that you stop, and you can consider their driving, the time of day,
conditions,
whether it put anybody at risk, and you can have a sensible, common sense approach to policing, and I'm sure the public would actually welcome that rather than just getting fines and points from cameras.
Yeah, which now happens to drivers who've often driven for decades without ever incurring a penalty, financial penalty or points. Yeah, and folks, I've said it before on this programme, I'll say it again, it is 20 miles an hour on the embankment, 24 hours a day. It is crackers. But back to the very serious subject of smart motorways and of the campaign Smart Motorways Kill. Mike Rawson, thank you for joining me. A final thought on the government's announcement. How disappointed do you feel?
I am disappointed because I had hoped that the government would say, yes, no more smart motorways, and we are going to reinstate hard shoulders because we accept that's what the public want, and they represent us when all said and done, not dictate, but represent. And the money they're saving apparently is £1 billion from not converting these other schemes. Spend that £1 billion on reinstating hard shoulders between the bridges. That's what I asked for. I don't want them to destroy bridges and go to huge cost. But a programme of reinstating the hard shoulders, and when that happens, we can all go home.